It's great to be in the SEC. Welcome back to the SEC Recap Podcast. I am your host, Ben Warren, coming in to recap Week 2, looking at our Week 2 picks, power rankings headed into Week 3, and our Week 3 matchups going into this weekend. Guys, if you're watching on YouTube, thanks so much for being here. Don't forget to hit that like button, hit subscribe. Share with your friends. And if you're listening on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you prefer to chug your podcasts, thanks so much. But head on over to YouTube and check us out there. I just like to put some game graphics, matchup picks, stuff like that throughout the season up that you can look at and follow along with on the YouTube channel that you just can't get if you're listening in audio form. No ad reads on this podcast, guys, ever, but I do have a donate QR code up there if you just want to toss me a couple bucks, pay for my morning coffee as I take a sip here. And of course, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at SEC Recap. So the SEC's dead. SEC's dead. SEC's no good this year. Apparently the ACC is the best team in college, or the best league in college football. They're going to win it all. Florida State. Shoot, I think Texas might be national champion. I think Florida State was week 1 national champions. And now Texas, the Longhorns, the We Are So Back Longhorns, are the week 2 national champions. We are so back. Texas is like so back. Well, they're kind of back. They beat Alabama, and of course, whenever Alabama loses, we have to spend an entire week talking about it. We can't talk about any of the other matchups like LSU at Mississippi State or Tennessee at Florida or South Carolina at Georgia. No, it all has to be about Alabama. It all has to be about, has Nick Saban lost it? Is the dynasty dead? Is it all over? Yeah, maybe, guys. Let's move on. There's other teams to talk about. We got other teams to talk about here. All right. So let's get in it real quick. Let's recap my picks from last week. I want to make this bigger here. There we go. And let me get my captions off. There we go. All right. I believe I went 10 for 14. Actually, scratch that. I think 9 for 14. I had Georgia marked as a call here, but I think it was actually a push because the line on the Georgia game was 42. But I'll start in the order that they happened. First game was Vanderbilt at Wake Forest. I called Vanderbilt to win, Wake Forest to win and cover the 10-point spread. All these were done last Thursday, so about a week ago. So those lines shift a little bit. These were the numbers when I call these games and pull these graphics. Next game up was Ball State at number 1 Georgia. The line on that was Georgia minus 42. I think they won by 42. Let me look here. 45-3. So that was a push, I think. But I marked it as a dub here on a graphic. Whatever. They won by 42. It's close enough, right? Not in sports betting, baby. Not close enough. All right, next game we had Eastern Kentucky at Kentucky. There are no lines for FCS games until Saturday morning. Obviously, I don't like waiting until Saturday morning to put the podcast out. I like to give you guys like at least 24 to 36 hours to listen to it. But so I didn't have numbers on this game, but I picked Kentucky to win outright. Kentucky beat, Eastern Kentucky 28-17. Maybe closer than Kentucky fans wanted it, but hey, that's the way it goes. Then we had number 20 Ole Miss at number 24 Tulane. I knew this would be a close game, called it to be a close game. I said that Ole Miss would win, but that Tulane would cover the 7.5 points. Ole Miss did win, but it was a little bit more of a blowout than that. Close game at first, but Ole Miss ended up beating Tulane 37-20. So I took the L on that one. Next game was Texas A&M at Miami. Thought Texas A&M would win that and cover the 4-point spread. God, was wrong. Maybe Miami's just better than we all thought. Very possible. but they lost to Miami 48-33. At least they're scoring points this year. There were some games from A&M last year where it was just abysmal to watch that offense. Then we had Arkansas at Kent State, I believe. No, sorry. Kent State at Arkansas. I had it flipped here. Kent State's one of those weird games. They're capable of hanging around with you. I didn't think they would for long here. So I picked Arkansas to win and Kent State to cover that 38 points, which did happen. Arkansas won 28-6. So Kent State able to kind of keep it within the point spread there. Then we had Austin P, the Governors, at number 9 Tennessee. That was in Knoxville. There was no line on this game at the time, but everybody thought Tennessee would win by 40, 50, maybe even 60 points. It was a closer, a lot uglier game. There was a rain delay. None of the pregame stuff happened. Don't know if that threw off the vibe, threw off the mojo. But I don't think there was ever a doubt that Tennessee would win that game. But 30-13, that's just not what you expect if you're a Vols fan, not from that offense and not with the defense looking as good as they have been. All right, and then we had the game of the night. It was number 11 Texas at number 3 Alabama. I know Alabama fans are disappointed. They have to come back to earth with the rest of us who have to deal with, a handful of losses per season. I did pick Alabama to win, though, because it was at home in Tuscaloosa. I thought they would win and cover the 7 points. Texas just looked really good. Quinn Ewers played out of his mind. 34-24, a 10-point ball game there. It was, I think, closer at times, but wow. I mean, maybe Texas is back. Like, Texas is so back. All right. We'll see. Then we had MTSU at Mizzou. I thought this would be a closer game than Vegas. I picked Mizzou to win, but I definitely picked MTSU to cover that 21-point spread, and it was probably too close for comfort for Mizzou fans. 23-19. Offense just not really firing, but Mizzou's got Kansas State coming to town this weekend. We're going to talk about it. Hopefully they can find some fireworks on offense. Then we had LSU playing Grambling, and I think I have this one flipped as well. Because this was a home game for LSU, but a get-right game, really, following week 1 loss to Florida State. No line on this. Picked LSU to win outright. Dub. Then we had McNeese at Florida. No line on that. Dub. Easy. Arizona at Mississippi State. Thought Mississippi State would win for sure and cover the 9. Went to overtime. Arizona kept it close. So just the 7-point win there by Mississippi State in the overtime. They didn't cover, but they got the win at the end of the season. That is all that matters. Good for the Bulldogs, Hail State. All right, Furman at South Carolina. Shane Beamer really talked up Furman. They're a good FCS squad, but they're an FCS squad. On no field on any day should they even be in the same realm as an SEC team. Maybe Vanderbilt's the exception, but this should have been an easy win for South Carolina, and it was 47-21. Furman kind of kept it close for a quarter and a half, but just I just couldn't keep up with the offense there with the Gamecocks. And then last game, the Pac-12 after dark matchup of the evening put the kids to bed. This was Auburn at Cal, traveling to the West Coast. And anytime you have an East Coast team, or just East Coast Central Time Zone, whatever, traveling to the West Coast for a late game, I mean, this was a 9:30 local time kick. So you're talking about it being damn near midnight. For the Auburn Tigers, by the time this kicks off, Auburn was a -6.5-point favorite. Knew Auburn would win. I definitely thought Cal would keep it close and cover that 6.5. End up being a 4-point ball game, 14-10. So, not too bad there if you're following along with some of my week 2 picks. Let's get into our power rankings following all that stuff. So not a lot has changed at the top. And I know some people are probably looking at this and going to scream at me for what that top 4 or 5 looks like. Just hear me out. I'll get to it. All right. Number 1 at the top, I don't think there should be any dispute in the SEC. It's the Georgia Bulldogs. The Georgia Bulldogs. Okay. Until proven otherwise, I know it hasn't looked perfect. Right? But all they did last year was get better as the season went. It's all I expect them to do this year. They don't have a matchup on their schedule until they have to travel to Knoxville to play Tennessee. We don't really know what Tennessee is going to look like, so that might not even be a game. I think it will be, but it might not. We don't know. Okay. They got South Carolina rolling in this week. I'm sorry. It's not going to be a ball game. I'm sorry, Gamecock fans. It's just not. So Georgia is definitively number 1. Number 2, I still have Alabama at the number 2 spot in the West. Yes, they lost to Texas. Texas looks freaking legit. Okay. So I don't think that's a bad loss. It dropped them in the AP poll to number 10. They're sitting just ahead of Tennessee now, which is number 11 in the AP. But Texas moved from number 11 up to number 4. So Texas is a top 4 team in the country, right behind Florida State, which beat LSU in week 1, right behind Michigan and Georgia, who are undefeated. So if you don't think Alabama should be the number 2 team based on talent record, yeah, they lost, but they lost to essentially what is a top 4 team right now. Who do you think should be in that number 2 spot? I've seen a lot of people put Ole Miss there, and I kind of get it, but who has Ole Miss played? They played Tulane. It's not a Power 5 team. Okay, it's a good team. It's a really good G5 team. Beat USC in the Cotton Bowl last year. So that's a good win. And they have Georgia Tech coming to town this week. Like, that's not supposed to be a close game. So I don't know. Like, Ole Miss hasn't played a top tier opponent. Tulane would be the closest. But they beat it by 17 points. So how top tier really is Tulane this year? I can see the argument for Ole Miss. I'm just not buying it. So I don't think LSU or Texas A&M with 1 loss is jumping Alabama right now. And Tennessee, even undefeated, on a neutral field, the way Tennessee's offense has looked, I'm not so sure. So Georgia 1, Alabama 2, number 3. This is where I've got Ole Miss. Because of that Tulane win, it's a good win. They actually piggyback Tennessee over that number 4 spot and move into number 3, which means I'm dropping Tennessee, dropping my Volunteers down to number 4. Yes, they're undefeated, but that was an ugly win versus Austin Peay, a team you should have beat by 40-50. They have to travel to Gainesville, to the Swamp, a place that stinks when you drive by it, to play the Florida Gators, where they've won once in the last 20 years. Okay. Tennessee's won in the Swamp once in the last 20 years. That's a tough matchup. If they can win that on the road, maybe we're jockeying for that 4-3, maybe even that 2 position, depending on how Alabama looks at South Florida this year. But for now, Ole Miss 3, Tennessee 4. And yes, I'm keeping, God, I know, I can hear it. I don't even feel good about it. But Texas A&M at number 5. Look, they lost on the road to a Miami team that I think is better than we thought. Miami is in the top 25. They're undefeated, 2-0. Maybe Miami's real good this year. Maybe Texas is back, and like Miami is also back. Okay. So yeah, 15-point loss or whatever it was, but I don't think it's a horrible loss for Texas A&M, depending on how Miami finishes the year. So I'm okay with A&M at 5, which means I'm also okay with moving LSU back up after that get-right game to number 6. They're showing pieces that they could put it back together. We said, I said all Georgia did was get better throughout the season last year. Well, that's all LSU did too. They still had a couple losses. They lost to Texas A&M team. They lost to a bad Texas A&M team. Maybe I should take that back. But benefit of the doubt, I don't know that I could put anybody in that back 7 ahead of Texas A&M, ahead of LSU. Even the teams that are technically undefeated right now. So it's not perfect. It's not pretty. I'm not even sure I fully agree with it, but that's where I have it right now. At number 7, I have Auburn. They went on the road against Cal. Tough road game. Traveled to the West Coast. Got that dub. Give me the Auburn Tigers at number 7. At number 8, I got Mississippi State. The Bulldogs beating Arizona at home. Good environment, good win for them. Number 9, Arkansas handling Kent State. Still got to see a little bit more offensively from them. Oh, excuse me. It is early morning. I've only made it through a few sips of my coffee. Just getting started here on a Thursday. Then at number 10, I have Kentucky, just kind of rolling through the back seven here. The win over Eastern Kentucky at home, kind of like that Austin Peay win for Tennessee. You expected more. You want to see a little bit more of those pieces come together. I think it can happen. I think all the components are there. Just coming out of last year, not seeing a lot of the strength that I think Wildcats fans were hoping for. Number 11, I think moving South Carolina up a little bit after that win over Furman, showing a little bit more of that offense. Yeah, it was Furman. No, they weren't challenged a whole lot, but I think it's good enough to move them up. Also moving Florida up a few spots after that win over McNeese, getting it done at home, just showing a little bit more of what they're capable of. I'm moving Missouri down to that number 13 spot. 4-point win over MTSU at home. Offense not looking great. Defense, I think, capable, but I don't know. On a neutral field versus Florida versus South Carolina versus Kentucky right now, I'm just not seeing it from the Mizzou Tigers there in Columbia to warrant a higher ranking. Then at the bottom, we're going to put Vanderbilt. They did lose. They were atop the East. I think it might still be atop the East at 2-0 because they played an extra game. But now they're 2-1 after the road loss to Wake Forest. So I'm going to have the Vanderbilt Commodores at the bottom. I just don't know what they're going to be able to do in conference play this year. All right, guys, let's move on into the week 3 picks. I am just rolling through it here. Don't want to drag this on too long. Coming up on about 18 minutes. All the analytics, podcast, YouTube analytics say that around that 30-minute mark is the sweet spot. So that's where I try to hit. But while you're here, before I jump into the picks, I just want to share with you really quickly, I do have some T-shirts, hoodies, sweatshirts available on my store. QR code right here on the YouTube video. This will also be in the description if you're listening to the podcast. I'm showcasing this week the Tennessee hoodie on that charcoal. So it's the orange Tennessee lettering, outline of the state of Tennessee, and the smoky hound dog there right in the location of Knoxville on that charcoal gray. So that really nice look. That orange pops on that smoky gray kind of color. And I've got one of these for each team, guys. Alabama, Arkansas, Auburn, Georgia, Florida, Kentucky, on and on and on and on. I've got one. It's got the name of the school outlined in the lettering. It's got the state outline, and then your mascot logo right there in the geographic location of your school. So check those out. They go for a good price, and I don't read any ads or have any sponsored content on this podcast. So help me out. Buy some T-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies as we head into fall. A few of you have, and I definitely appreciate it. Don't make a lot on those, but a few bucks helps, just pay for server costs, hosting costs for the website, things like that. And don't forget, you can also donate. I'll leave that QR code up there throughout the video here on YouTube. Appreciate it so much, guys. All right, picks. Week 3 picks. Here we go. Once again, no FCS lines until Saturday morning. I'm recording this on a Thursday. So any FCS game will just be an outright pick 'em. First up, starting with LSU, number 14, LSU traveling to Mississippi State. This is an 11 a.m. game. LSU 10-point road favorite against Zach Arnett's Mississippi State Bulldogs. Tough environment anytime you got the clanger of the cowbells there in Starkville, but LSU's clearly the better team, more talented team, got a lot more consistency rolling over from last year as far as their offensive and defensive schemes. So I think LSU should win on the road. I think they should also cover the 10 points on the road. I would have LSU probably at like a 12 or 13 point win, two touchdowns, completely within the realm of possibility. But expect Mississippi State defensively try to muddy it up for them, try to make things hard for Jaden Daniels. He's throwing well, 615 yards on the season, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. Will Rogers not as prolific offensively as we've seen from that kind of RIP, outdated Mike Leach air raid offense. Will Rogers, 389, 5 touchdowns on the year, no interceptions though, so take care of the ball. That's what matters. Mississippi State running the ball a lot more. Marks, 43 carries, 250 yards, 3 touchdowns. So they're getting it done on the ground. So I could expect Mississippi State to try to play some ball control here. Keep the ball out of Jaden Daniels' hands, control the clock a little bit more, and lean on your defense to keep things close with LSU. But give me LSU and covering the 10. Next game, we have Kansas State at Mizzou. Now, last year, Mizzou traveled to Kansas State. It was a lopsided win for the Wildcats. It was a blowout, but they have to come to Columbia. It's not really an intimidating place to play, but it is still a road game. But Kansas State is our 5.5 point favorites at Mizzou. ESPN has them favored at a 68.6% chance to win. A lot of people want to see the other quarterback for Mizzou, Sam Horn. I think Brady Cook's a good athlete. A lot of people just not quite happy with the offensive production, but Mizzou kind of getting it done on the ground with Cody Schrader, 41 carries, 222 yards, 1 touchdown. I think Kansas State is a better team. A lot of people feel like this is a game Mizzou should win. I'm not so sure. I think Kansas State's favored for a reason. 5.5 is a tough line. Anytime you see that hook there, but I think this is a game Kansas State could win by 2 field goals. So give me Kansas State to win and to cover that 5.5 points. All right, next we got South Carolina traveling to Athens, number 1 Georgia. This is a 2:30 p.m. This is a CBS game. Sorry. Promise it will not be like this off ball. It's just early. It's early in the morning. I'm trying to get this done before I have to start work and some other stuff. All right. South Carolina traveling to Athens. They are 27-point underdogs. I know, what year was it? Like 2019 or something, that South Carolina went on the road and upset Georgia. They haven't stopped talking about it since. That is not going to happen here. Okay. This game has not even been competitive in the last 2 years. I think it was like 40 something to 13 2 years ago. And last year it was like 45 to 3 or 6. It's not been a close ball game. It's not even been close to competitive. So I don't expect it to be this year. Offensively, can South Carolina do some stuff? Yeah, but that line was so bad against North Carolina. I'm a little nervous for Spencer Rattler. Got to be quite honest with you. Hope he can stay on his feet and not on his rear end in this game against that Georgia defensive front. Give me Georgia. I think Georgia, based on past 2 years, should cover the 27. And it shouldn't be close. Maybe South Carolina can hang there for a quarter or two, but I think the way Georgia's kind of been pulling away in the second half, I see that happening. But who knows? South Carolina feels like one of those teams. They just got one shell loaded in the barrel for a surprise upset of the year. Last year was Tennessee, and or Clemson. Pick which one. It was both, I guess. They got a double kill off last year. I don't care though. All right. Next game up, we got number 10, Alabama, go on the road. And hopefully a get-right game. You don't want that game to be on the road, though, at South Florida. A game they should win. This is a 2:30 p.m. game. They're 32-point favorites. They should win, no problem. I think, and cover the 32. I forget what the stat on Nick Saban's record or point spread, win spread is in games following a loss. But they usually come out and murder whoever they play. So that's what I expect here. South Florida is not very good. But I believe that's where Alex Golesh is now, Tennessee's former offensive coordinator, probably running that same kind of up-tempo offense that gave them fits last year. Don't quite have the same talent that they saw against Tennessee last year, though. So expect Alabama to win big, cover the 32. Next, we got UL Monroe at Texas A&M. This should be a dub for the Aggies at home in College Station, but 34 points, my God, that's a big spread. Anytime I see a spread that big, I always think, could they? Yes. Am I going to bet on it? No. So lumped in here with all these picks that I think are winners, give me A&M to win, but UL Monroe to cover the 34. That's just a lot of points. Then what a lot of people think is the game of the week. This is Tennessee, number 11 now. Tennessee dropping from number 9 last week. After a, closer than comfortable game against Austin Peay. 11, Tennessee traveling to Gainesville to play Florida in the Swamp. This line has moved a little bit since I put this together. They opened at like an 8-point consensus favorite. Tennessee did. It's moved now. I think it might be down to 6.5. It might move down to 6 or 5 even by the time this game kicks off. But Tennessee is on paper the better team. Talent-wise, I think there's some comparisons to be made. I think Florida does have comparable talent, but as far as offensive scheme, quarterback talent, receiver talent, overall defensive talent, the edge has to go to Tennessee here. They've been really good along the line of scrimmage. That's where Florida was kind of exposed, especially in the Utah game. That's a tough road game to play. Utah, really good team. I don't know if Tennessee would have beat Utah that day on the line of scrimmage. But they really, really frustrated Florida's offense. Graham Mertz didn't know what to do. They couldn't read blitzes or pressures. I expect Tennessee to try to do a lot of that same kind of stuff. Blitz with, 5, make Graham Mertz beat you over the top. Maybe Graham Mertz tries to challenge, Kamal Haddon for Tennessee, who doesn't like to turn his head around and look for the ball and is, picked up a couple PI penalties. And I expect Tennessee to turn around and try to do the same thing offensively. If Florida wants to try to bring down pressure, or bring in some linebackers, or maybe bring a safety down, put pressure on Joe Milton and force him to make those tough throws that he's not been making down the field. That's going to open up those opportunities for Tennessee. So I expect both of these teams to kind of open up the playbook a little bit and challenge a little bit more down the field. Still expect Tennessee to try to lean on that run game, which has been super good with Jalen Wright, Jabari Small, Dylan Sampson. Expect Florida to try to get their run game going, which has not been good with Macho Johnson and Trevor Etienne. We'll see. A lot of people picking Tennessee to win and cover in this one. I am not in that environment. I know Tennessee's history down there. I think the Vols should win. I expect them to win, but I think it is going to be closer. I think this comes down to like a field goal, maybe 2. So the point spread I had here was Tennessee -7. I think Florida covers that. So give me Tennessee in the win, Florida to cover. Next, we have Samford at Auburn. Nothing to talk about here. This should be an Auburn dub. It shouldn't be close. Next game, we have Vanderbilt at UNLV. Vanderbilt is a -4-point favorite. I'm going to be an SEC homer here and just stick with the SEC team. Give me Vandy to win minus the 4 points. I think they cover. Their offense is good. Defense is not good. But you're an SEC team. You should beat UNLV. Hopefully Vandy's able to just pull away with this one and get the win and cover those 4. Next, we have Georgia Tech going to Ole Miss. Now, number 17, Ole Miss. Sorry, I don't have it here in the graphic, but it'll be correct on my website. It's just not correct here on the video. But Georgia Tech traveling to number 17, Ole Miss. Ole Miss, a 20-point favorite. That's kind of a big spread. They didn't beat Tulane by that much. Georgia Tech's not as good as Tulane. But give me Ole Miss to win. But I think Georgia Tech can keep it closer than the 20 points. If Ole Miss beats them by more than that, I might be making a case for Ole Miss to be number 2 in my power rankings next week. Then we have BYU coming to Fayetteville, Arkansas. They traveled to BYU last year. Arkansas is a 10-point favorite. I saw something that Rocket Sanders is going to be out of this game. I haven't looked into that. Not sure what's going on. But I think Arkansas is still a much better team. BYU can play you tough, but Arkansas should win this one, and they should cover the 10 points. Last game of the evening, we have Akron. That's Joe Moorhead's Akron Zips. The Tangy Zips. Traveling to Lexington. Kentucky, 25-point favorite. Akron is not a good football team, but they can play dirty. We saw that with Tennessee last year. They were going for ankles. They were really trying to injure players, and they ended up injuring Cedric Tillman, and he ended up missing a lot of time last season, and even when he came back was just not quite the same. Hope that Kentucky can stay healthy against these dirty mofos, because if they're getting blown out by 3, 4, 5 scores, they will start going for knees, going for ankles. So watch out for that. Devin Leary, stay healthy. But Kentucky should win and win big. Guys, that's it. That's my week 3 picks. So we covered week 2 success rate. We looked at the power rankings and talked matchups as we head in here to week 3. We are just past that 30-minute mark, so I don't want to hold you off any longer. Analytics say that's a good time, as we say in the South, to let me let you go. So don't forget to toss a few bucks at the pod or check out my merch here on my SEC Recap Bonfire store. That's bonfire.com/store/SEC Recap. That QR code is right here on the screen, or it'll be in the description below if you're listening to the podcast. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at SEC Recap. Check out all my content at secrecap.com. I will be back with you guys next week to recap all the action from this week and talk week 4. Catch you on the flip. Peace.